Good afternoon and welcome to English Proficiency 1 class or EP1. Last week we have discussed the different types of sentences according to structure. For this week, we will be discussing about clauses, the different kinds of clauses, and categories under dependent clause. So first, let's discuss the difference between a clause and a phrase because most of the students are confused on the difference of these two. Clause is a group of words that contains a subject and or predicate. So it has two kinds, namely an independent clause and dependent clause. So independent clause and dependent clauses are already mentioned last week. So we will discuss this thoroughly today. Okay? So we have here two examples of clauses. In particular, these are independent clauses. Remember that all sentences are clauses, but not all clauses are sentences. Now let's have phrase. A phrase is a group of words without a subject-verb component. It is used as a single part of speech. So here are some examples. Now that we already know the difference between a phrase and a clause, it's now time to proceed to the different kinds of clauses. First, we have independent clause. It is also known as a main clause. It is a clause that forms a complete independent thought. So it is a type of clause which can already stand alone as a sentence. So we can consider independent clause a sentence already because it already contains a subject and a predicate. So here are some examples. So we have here the second kind of clause, which is a dependent clause. So it is also called as subordinate clause. It is a clause that relies on the information from an independent clause to form a complete and logical thought. So this is the kind of clause which cannot stand alone on its own to form a sentence. So as you can see on our examples, we have here underlined words. Okay, so these underlined words are our dependent clauses. So we have here the different categories of dependent clauses. First, we have noun clause. Noun clause is a dependent clause that functions as noun. This means that it can perform all the roles that a normal noun could play in a sentence, such as being the subject or the object of a verb. So we have here an example. In the first example, our dependent clause, which is wherever we decide to go, okay, that clause functions as the subject of our sentence. On the second example, our dependent clause functioned as the direct object of the verb. Second, we have relative clause, which is also called as adjective clause. So this one provides descriptive information about a noun. It can either be essential to the sentence or also known as restrictive clause or non-essential or non-restrictive clauses. So we have here two examples. So as you can see, there are two relative clause here in our sentence. So each relative clause functions differently. The first one is an example of non-restrictive clause, meaning you can omit those words or this clause because it is non-essential or non-important. Okay? It is not important in the sentence because it gives only additional description to our noun or our subject. While in the second one, we have here a restrictive clause, meaning it is important or essential part of the sentence. The book that I wrote is being published in January. So we can say that the book is being published in January because there are many books which is being published in January. So which book? Of course, you have to describe or give additional information. That is why you have to put relative clause or adjective clause. Okay? The kind of clause which can describe your noun or your subject. So in this case, our relative clause is that I wrote. What kind of book? Which book? Okay? And the last one is adverbial clause. It is also known as adverb clause. It is used to modify adjectives, verbs, adverbs, and sometimes entire clauses. So it functions similarly as the normal adverb. Okay? So aside from that, it also uses subordinating conjunctions to connect to an independent clause. So last time we have discussed, or I have mentioned already, some of those subordinating conjunctions that we can use to connect dependent clause to an independent clause. Okay? So we have here some examples. In the first example, I went to the park before my parents woke up. Our adverbial clause, before my parents woke up, describes your verb, which is went. Okay? The second one, animals are cute while they're young. Our adverbial clause, which is while they're young, describes your adjective cute. Okay? I work better, on the third example, I work better when I have total privacy. So our adverbial clause, when I have total privacy, describes your adverb better. Okay? I have here some reminders in order for you to distinguish the different categories of dependent clause. First is, a noun clause answers questions like who, what, or whom. Second, an adjective clause answers questions like which one or which. And lastly, an adverb clause answers questions like when, where, why, with what goal or with what result, and under what conditions. So those are the different kinds of clauses and categories under dependent clause. So if you have any questions or clarifications, just send me a message in our Edmodo. So I will also post an activity in our Edmodo for this week. Okay, so that will be all for this week. So thank you for listening. Have a nice day and bye-bye.